Welcome to the first. You have a story. If you look back on your life, you've done things for the first time that no one in your family, in your town, in the country has done. This is Dr. Sandi. You have unknowingly paved the way for others without knowing it or even acknowledging it. This is where you tell your story so that those who come after you can walk in your footsteps to build their own firsts. Today, I'm speaking to James P. Moore, who's a systems design engineer with an engineering degree from the University of Waterloo. He has been recognized by all levels of government and media across the country as Canada's foremost expert in energy production, conservation, and climate change. His company, 4EL Energy, develops new energy technologies in production and conservation. He is the first person in history to determine the equations that define the prime number sequence, and the first person to determine the equation that proves the Collatz Conjecture. You will understand how his mind works by visiting the great sites.life, where he has a site of first. Welcome, James P. Moore. So today I'm speaking to James Moore, and James came to me through a colleague, and I really liked what they said about James, that he had a site of first, which was the biggest attraction to me. And I spoke to James briefly last week and thought, hey, let's just get this podcast together. So welcome, James, and thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thank you. It's an absolute pleasure. I've been looking forward to this all week since I talked to you. I said, I got it.
Yes, please do. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell the audience what you do and some of your firsts, and then I would love to revisit the first website.
Yeah, people ask me that questions. I never know where to start. A bit of an eclectic background. I'm an engineer by education, University of Waterloo, Canada. Systems design. My background is all in energy. But I'm also an author. I've written 8 books now. I've also created something called The Great Sites, and it started over 30 years ago. And it was in response to how I looked at the world, and I realized, like you did, is people don't appreciate the beauty around them.
But sometimes they don't even know. They don't even know to appreciate it, right?
They never give them the opportunity. If you, if you ask the right questions, which this whole site is about, ask the right questions, and the room changes. And all that incredible life experience that they have just shines. And it's magnificent. You go, there it is, every time. So I created a site called The Great Sites that has 22 different ways of looking at the world and asking questions that it has no choice but to bring out the best in you every time, no matter where you go. And it gets you thinking about things you haven't thought of maybe ever, or perhaps reminds you of a grandmother or a grandfather, yes, or a son or a daughter, or whatever. But it takes you out of that experience that you have every day. And I decided there has to be a place where we can go and celebrate the incredible life that you live, remind you of everything that's happening around you for the first time. So I spent 30 years creating.
What I feel when I see your site, or even when people talk about their first, is that this is your legacy that you're leaving behind for other people who come behind us to say, oh my goodness, there was a guy named James Moore, and if he did that, I could do this. Or I can use James as my platform to launch something else because his ideas are so great, but I could tweak it a little bit and make it even better. And I'm always looking for people to better themselves.
Everybody has a first.
Everyone.
Every single person, you find it. Now, on the side, I've had a street ministry for decades with the homeless. And I go sit and I talk to them, I become their friends. And sometimes it takes weeks, months, sometimes years to get to the point where they will trust you because they trust nobody.
Yes.
They have nothing. They have no family. They have no past. And I go through this experience with them. If I can get them to start to talk about the great things that have happened in their life, the first time I start writing. And after about a half an hour, I do this for them. I said, I want you to see this piece of paper. I said, why do I want to just have a look? That happened to you, right? You said that happened to you? Well, it's the first time? Yes, yes, yes. And for the next 15 minutes, we talk about all the great things that happened in their life that they've forgotten about. And that's one of the gifts of first that you bring to the world. That all of these incredible inventions and ideas and insights and what was the first time that pen took to paper and it was Shakespeare? Tell me about that night, that day, that time, that candle. What inspired him to do that? So good on you.
And the more people talk, James, the more they remember, the more they say, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
I totally forgot about that. And that's the part that I like is their aha moment of, by the way, there's another time that I did this, or I'm the first to do that.
Yep.
You don't remember all the stuff you do over time unless you're documenting it.
That's
Until somebody says something, you're like, gee, yes.
It's how to bring out the best in people. And the fun thing is you're not trying to create something. It already exists.
Correct.
It's their histories. You're just celebrating who they are. And you're giving them permission to be just absolutely genuine. This happened to me, and I had an incredible experience, and this is who I am.
You said the word history when you're in school as a little child, and you, even as an adult, and you read something about someone that you never met, and it could be, I remember mine was Harriet Tubman, the person that I remembered the most. Just, I read about her in public school. I must have been about 9 or so when I got introduced to Harriet Tubman. And it fascinated me that a woman at that time would lead slaves out of the country and successfully across to Canada and came back. That was the part, came back time and time and time again and took more and freed all these people. And I remember my heart was just beating when I read about it because I'd never heard of anyone like her, or I heard of people, but they might have been white people who helped us, right? It was someone I could identify with, and it stayed with me up to now. It stayed with me.
And here's the thing, when you say that, I think about the moment that inspired her inside, that now's the time when the permission came, the time came.
Yes.
She puts her shoes on for the first time to get this done. Those are the moments I absolutely cherish.
Those are movie moments.
Absolutely movie moments. Absolutely. I study film. It's one of my hobbies. I look for those moments in true life stories. There it is. Have you seen the movie called Mully?
No.
Please watch it. You'll just
Mully?
Mully. You'll fall in love with it. He's a remarkable man in Africa. He came from nothing, absolutely nothing. And now he feeds over 1,000 children a day.
Oh my goodness.
The hero of the story is knocking on the door of a house. He has no shoes. He's not eaten for days. He's not bathed for months. He has nothing, nobody. He is walking the planet alone. He knocks on this door. This lady opens the door, and she looks at his feet, and she looks at him. He says, what can I do for you? And he just stares at his feet. And she says, come in. That's the hero of life. That changes everything.
Yes.
Without her saying yes to someone so completely lost and having nothing. That started everything. I'm going to get this number wrong, but over 50,000 children he's fed.
Wow.
He started farms. He educates, all because that one lady said yes.
Someone gave them a chance.
First day to that entire journey that continues on. I said, there it is. I look for those days.
I love that. And so let's take a look at your site. You have sharing capability. So okay. I want people to see your site, the great sites, and just talk through them as you go so that,
I'm just gonna let me know if you see this. Can you see
yes,
this?
I do. Yes.
Listen to this. It's the best I got, so it's just a few minutes long.
Great sites where the world shares its best memories and futures to come.
Can you hear
It
it?
is a gift for you,
Yes.
the best moments you can look forward to anytime.
Oh,
If you could have one website on the internet made just for you that gives you 22 unique and incredible ways to think about your life and the world you live in every day, how would it change your relationships, your family, your career, your business, your life? The Great Sites has 22 different platforms, each dedicated to a different aspect of life: positive, informative, engaging, healing, motivating, and so much more. Great Sites is time for yourself. It's a constant source of creativity and ideas, of teaching moments, of joy, awe, and opportunities. It is a social media platform where the world shares its best insights, memories, and futures, uncommon questions, the best videos, stories, quotes, and images with a singular question: what do you need tomorrow? It's a great question that gives you time to breathe, then listen, think, consider, and then choose what will be remarkable about you and your life tomorrow. Then, what will you do today to make that happen? You decide. Today, now.
wow.
Think of one particular person that came into your life, perhaps ever so briefly. You have never forgotten the day you met them and how they impacted your life immeasurably. They slowed things down. You remember that it all started with a single question, like the one that we just mentioned. And decades later, you realize that the person you remember likely had the same experience. There was someone for them. If you could give that opportunity to everyone, every child, every teenager, every parent, every business owner with a computer or cell phone, give them the same opportunity, how would it change everything? Now everyone has the opportunity. In some ways, Great Sites is like the one person you would call late at night, your best friend, because they always know the right thing to say to you. Now take it further. Take all the platforms and combine them and think about the futures they will create in life. Extraordinary stories coming together to celebrate your life today and for years to come. Creating a new world for you. Creating an incredible way to see your life in the world. Creating a world of exceptional legacies. The platforms are very much like an orchestra of instruments that can be used to compose an entire world of new possibilities and accomplishments together. Then share these with hundreds of people, about millions. Then watch what happens. Using any metric, the value of the Great Sites, especially financially, is simply incalculable. It is exponential. Its impact, global, generational.
Bravo. I love it. Now I have a new place to go play.
Yes.
And I hope the listeners will take advantage of that. It's free. And you're always, how often do you update? How often do you add to it?
It's a very carefully curated group of videos. I search all the time.
You want to
But
stop sharing? Or are you going to something else?
I'm just going to go. So 1 second, please.
Okay.
I'll go to this. I search every day, probably 1 or 2 a week. That really, I find they go, that's exceptional. That's really something. And I look forward to them. It's one of my favorites. You mentioned this the other day. It's called The Great Words. And this is a celebration of all the great words that have inspired and accomplished everything that we hold most dear. Things like courage and dignity and care and fundamentals that we teach at early age, but we forget as we get older. Kindness, for sure.
We don't really think about how powerful words are.
So I just added Maya Angelou. She was talking about great words in one of her YouTube videos. I just added her. So words are things, and they are. Words have a lineage. Words have a history. When they show up in your life, respect them as you would, as if you were inviting a guest into your life and what can it do for you. So this is a dedication to the great words. When
And
you,
words are negative. Do you only feature positive words or both?
I think if you want negative words, that's 99.999% of the world. And I insist on inspiring people with the greatness that is. That's, I think, overlooked, not taught well. It's never been given the opportunity to shine as a collective. That's why there's 22 different platforms. But this one is a story I like to talk about. A couple, they meet and they're young, and they decide that they would have one word that would define their relationship, and it would be kindness. And they decided within the family, within the marriage, kindness, and within how they treated business and on, and kindness. And it set them completely apart. And when she was in her old age, and she was in a retirement home, and her husband had passed on, and she was just a remarkable, her kids had done so well, her grandkids, everybody said, how did you do this? How did this happen? And she said, let me think about it a bit. She came back a few days later, said, well, I decided early on, my husband and I would focus on one great word, kindness, and that changed everything for us. And when you think about all the great words, you start putting 2 or 3 of these together and you give them to a child, their entire evolution changes. It has no choice. The power of great words has been proven. You've given them something that's a gift forever. And then if you give them the gift of cherishing it and respecting it and to visit it and to live it, well, you've done the best you can possibly do. Solomon himself couldn't have given a child a better gift. So that's one of these.
We actually don't think about it in the sense that I can quote things my grandmother said to me when I was a little girl, and it pops up in my head at the most, I can't say inopportune times, but if I'm doing something that I think she wouldn't approve of, her voice is in my head. And you know you're doing either something wrong or something right based on the voice, the words that she's saying. And a lot of times as a kid, you get, do this, don't do that. Little later, you might understand the why of not to do it, but you respond to that. Don't touch the fire, you'll get burned, right? So you not to do that. Then there are other things she used to tell me that now I'm like, oh my goodness, she probably shouldn't have told me these things. But when you're sitting down with yourself and these thoughts come to you about the impact that these people had in your lives with their words, can either make you a positive person or a negative person. And I would say she balanced it out really well, but the words that I think about are just like my guiding light sometimes.
When you talk about your grandmother, I cannot help, on one of the platforms on the great sites, it's called the 30-year Monday, which honestly doesn't make any sense to anybody except me. But when people of a certain quality and age walk into a room, I've been so blessed in my life to have incredible elderly people, sophisticated, kind, brilliant, wise, gifted. And when they walk into the room, your life changes. I've dedicated this entire platform to them. And if just give me one moment here, because
all healing comes from inside ourselves. We have the physician on the outside and the physician on the inside, and all healing is based on love. We really don't understand our own power. I have this kind of idea that when God created this earth, whoever God is to whoever you are, created the earth, and it was beautiful and everything was in place and the way it should be. But then he created the human being, and he said to us, now you are the only creatures that have the right to choose and have free will. So therefore, I give you dominion over the earth. And we decided that what he meant by dominion was dominance. And so we've taken over the earth and done what we darn well choose with it. And look where we are. So it's that reality the inner part of us, we're all reaching for our true humanity. And that true humanity understands that we are the ones who do the healing.
Wow, that's so powerful. I keep saying wow because I don't have another word to describe how that
Let's just keep
feels.
going. Let's just keep going here. Let's celebrate the people you want to talk to. What else would you like to talk about? We have
Well, what are
everything.
some of your other firsts?
Oh, let me show you this one here. This one's it's actually on the great sites, but this started when I was 17 years old, which is more than 5 years ago. This is the very first of its kind to generate electricity and to produce clean water anywhere in the world at a very low wind speed. It uses, we call them a land sail, first of its kind. It'll be 1/10 the cost of solar, making it affordable, 1/10 the cost of any wind turbine, has no maintenance costs ever. The gift is that when you put it into the ground, you have free electricity forever.
Wow.
You got to think about that.
Why is that not a standard or available throughout the world? Is it expensive to produce? Is it?
No, it's 1/10 the cost. We are at the point where it's going to be. The design is ready. We're ready. We need somebody who has the ability to say yes to it. So we're looking for a financier who understands the impact. My reason for doing this is 2 million children die every year because they don't have clean water to drink. And this will change all that. 1 billion people in the world do not have electricity, and this will change all that. This comes with its own onboard computer, communications, cell phone, internet, Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth. It becomes a resource hub so that you can produce clean water. You can grow food with it. You can bathe for the first time. You can have refrigeration for the first time, and on and on. And it's a gift. I say this for those who have a spiritual sense. It's a true gift from him.
Can you explain how it works, James?
If you've ever been on a rowing machine, you pull real hard. If that rowing machine was a generator, you would generate power pulling real hard on. So it'd be 3 or 4 of your friends being pulled down the street. It's that powerful. And instead of the lines go down into a generator and it turns the generator. And then at the end of its cycle, as you'll see here shortly, it folds in, it comes in real gentle, requiring very little energy, kind of like a butterfly coming to land. It folds again, and it generates power.
What is it made of?
Carbon fiber, stainless steel, and a fabric called Spectra, which is the toughest, most durable fabric ever created by human beings. They use it in NASA, designed to last forever. But the gift is the wind never stops. You have energy, power, communications, clean water forever once you put them in the ground, no matter where you put it. And you don't
help me again with this. So let's say we normally get wind of some kind, but let us say that in a hurricane, for example, where there's a lot of wind, does it harness that power?
It'll come in and protect itself. It'll furls up and it'll sit against the mast until it knows it's safe. And then once it's safe, it'll start coming.
So it actually thinks for itself?
It's completely autonomous. It says it's not AI, but it's as close as we can get.
Oh my goodness.
It changes with direction automatically. You don't need a grid. You can plug right into it. We asked the question, if you needed 5 kilowatts of power for free, what would you do with it? Because here's the thing, Sandy. Electricity is all about creating opportunity, creating electricity, what it can do for you. In the solar industry and the wind turbine industry, it's how do we offset electricity costs? That's not what this is about. What can you do with electricity that creates entrepreneurship, education, clean health, refrigeration? How do we grow great food with this? How do we clean water? How do we avoid this illness? And what can electricity do today that does? It's already proven. Everywhere you put this, it's the question of, this is free. What can you do with this for the first time? And ask that question to an entire people. Say, this is free now. What can you do? What are your ideas? Plug it in, show us what you can do. What can you accomplish? What will you write? What will you teach?
This is all the guys who have oil wells and all those other power sources are going to be very ticked off at you, James.
No, we get that question frequently. We really do. Most of the world that we'll be servicing is not even a consideration to them. They are very large ticket, huge megawatts. We're here to help the people that need the most. They'll continue with things like large coal plants or nuclear or large wind turbines. Everybody ignores this. Everybody ignores the 1 billion people that have prayers every day. And this is an answer to prayer. You put them in the ground, it's cost effective at a regional level, at a group level. Even a small village can get together and buy one. And then they can grow crops. And then they can do, and it just keeps going, never stops. So we're so far away from their concern because they have nothing that's profitable to them. This is profitable to, this is the gift. It's profitable to the people that need it the most for the first time.
So ideally, this looks like someplace in Africa that I'm looking at on your screen.
We have so much interest in Africa. It will be our first. We have Kenya, Uganda, Nigeria. So many people there that just, this is a godsend. This is next for them. And we're looking for, I have to go back in history talking about firsts. The very first steam engine ever produced was a gentleman named Newcomen. And he didn't change the world, the financier did. He was a man who had the enterprise and the financial backing. He understood what it could do for the world. Thomas was his name, Thomas Newcomen. But this gentleman came along and said, I see what you're about to do, and I can do this. I know how to do this. And we're looking for a financier to do that. Just say, yes, this is an absolute no-brainer. We will do this together. So that's what I'm looking for now. It's time.
It is time. I think it's time not just for Africa. I think it's time in the underserved populations right here in the US or any other large country.
Yeah.
That might be a way of getting them to embrace it a little bit more.
We were talking to a wonderful lady in Kenya. She grows apples, and her biggest cost is electricity and water. So with this, it's free. Her profitability goes up 70% forever.
Did she try it?
Well, we're at that phase where we have to start building them. But she's just like, I have to have this. And everybody says the same thing. So it's at that point where everybody wants one and everybody's looking for the first one. But going back to what we were talking about, there is always a time in history where somebody is brave enough and they put on their shoes and they say, this is what has to happen. There will be electricity, and there will be a light bulb.
Do you think the time is coming shortly where you will get someone to say that? Typically, if a governmental agency or the government decide this is our strategy for, for my period of being in office or whatever, then they'll make it the thing that gets done.
This is the purview of the entrepreneur. It always has been. I'm a historian by nature and an engineer. I study the firsts in engineering. Everything great out of anything that's accomplished in engineering and firsts comes from the entrepreneurs and the most courageous people. And I say that courage not because they took a risk. It's because they didn't see risk. They saw obvious. Everybody else saw risk and they said, well, this is clear. I've done the math myself. I'm an engineer. I can do this. Of course we can build this. And then they said yes. The very first people that said yes to the first electric motor, they said, of course, this makes absolute sense. We'll profit. This will come to market because we are that good. We're looking for that person to say, of course, I am that good to support this because I recognize the inherent value and I can do the equations myself. I have no risk here. Well,
speaking of equations, tell me about your prime number equation thing that you did.
When I was 7 years old, my dad put an old guitar in my hand. And one of the things, I'd sit on the side of the bed and it was me and my brother. And he taught me how to play guitar on a guitar that wasn't tuned. I didn't know it. But he also insisted that we learned our times tables. And he would sit there, what's 3 times 7? What's 5 times 8? And what's 12 times 6? And he'd walk up. So all during my young years, I had math in my head when I went to bed. And by the time I was in grade 4, I was a math tutor's assistant. When I was in grade 6, I came from a really, really small town. And God bless them, my family, there's blue collar and then there's blue collar. And I'm here. And small school. And they didn't know what to do with me. So they handed me a textbook and they sent me to another room.
Where was this? Where were you then? Where were you living?
A town called Preston, Ontario, Canada. And they gave me another room. They didn't teach me a thing. They just said, here's a textbook and let me know when you're done. In grade 7, I didn't have to do math. They gave me Xerox tapes to count the entire year. They didn't take me anywhere. And I counted Xerox tapes to support the school. In grade 8 was the same thing. Ended up winning the calculus award in high school. And one thing like that, it's silly stuff. Anyways, about 10 years ago, I went to the library and was going through the math books. And there was one on, it's called the Millennium Prizes. And there were some of the outstanding questions that have challenged mathematicians for years and years, hundreds of years, thousands of years. And I took it out just because I was curious. And one had something to do with prime numbers. And I started working on it. And within a couple months, I discovered the equations that define the prime number for the first time in history. And I'll show you that. And this is the, let me see, let me know if you can see this.
Yes, I can.
So it's went on to prove the prime numbers for the first time, which is vital because prime numbers are the backbone of most security all around the world. It's used in what's called the RSA. And they take 2 prime numbers and multiply them together, and it's impossible to get them back. So to speak, you can't factor them. This is too hard. There's no equations. They never had equations. But now that they do, they can make it even more. It's strengthened security. And on it went to, when you take these equations and you apply them to something called the twin prime conjecture, which means nothing to the world. It really doesn't. But for 2,000 years, they've been going, well, this is a curiosity. And if we could just understand this, maybe we could figure it out. But the equations figured those out. And then another set of questions were what they called the Goldbach conjectures. Well, these equations figured those out. And so going back in time to over 2,000 years with these questions, these fundamentals that have always been at the heart of mathematics and they've been proven now for the first time, they are. So that's 10 years in the making and recently been released with videos and this book. But it's not a book for mathematicians. It's a book for everybody where you can walk through and go, okay, yeah, I see it. Yeah, okay, yeah, and then now I get why. Well, that's wow, a little bit of wow, and that's the good part of first is there's always a wow, right?
I keep saying that every time you open something up. I'm like, wow, there's no other word to express that.
Everybody who's been in, God bless a gentleman who was at the University of Waterloo. He was the preeminent number theorist in Canada. And world renowned, also cryptography and everything. And I presented this work to him, and the first thing he said is, wow, I've never seen anything like that before. When I showed him the equations, and then it went on, and he literally put his head in the sand. He said to me, do you have any idea what this means? And I said, I think I do. 10 years ago, I thought I did, but I really didn't. He did. He had studied this for his entire life, and now that I've studied it for so long, I really see the implications.
How is it being used today, James? How, in what areas that we know of?
Well, prime numbers, as mentioned, it's used in security. Every time you tap or swipe or do something online, order something, these equations are the backbone of it. But now we have the opportunity to make it much more secure and to create even better security measures. So cryptography is so paramount. It's so important because they have such powerful computers. When these security systems were first invented, it was in the 70s. And I came from that era. I mean, they didn't even have floppy disks yet.
Right.
So all of it's based on technology that's 50 years old. But now they have equations that can take them to incredible levels and allow them to just explore. The one thing that's beautiful about mathematics is it's always progressing. It's one of the most creative aspects in worlds of science and exploration. And you're seeing it now with AI especially, but it's always progressing and looking for that next, and it's very patient in its way, and it's kind and it's gentle. And it's the truth to it that I love so much. When you talk about first, there's always a truth to first. And when truth shows up in a moment, there's nothing going to stop it.
I was watching that movie, Numbers, about, the woman who helped to calculate getting men back from out of space.
Yeah.
And that's the first time I really sat down and go, this is all a numbers game of whether or not you do something, whether or not you live or die. And that aspect was based on increments. If you miss it by a little bit, you could be dead. And it has to be right, spot on for you to do that calculation. So I know a lot of people can do that in their heads, like that woman, she could write it out and calculate. But computers are taking over, like you said, the calculation of computers is so fast. At what point do you ever think that old show about computers taking over the world? Like, is that possible? Can they get so smart that they could actually run the world?
Well, I love that question. The fact is that artificial intelligence is just absolutely in its infancy. I use it all the time. And it's a tool that when you are very, very precise in the question you're asking, it can be very, very precise in the answer. If you deviate from the question and its precision, it deviates from its answer. It has no ability to discern whether it's right or not. That's one thing that I think the whole world needs to understand. It doesn't know if it's wrong. It has no ability to determine whether it's right or not. It's all based on probabilities, not correctness. And that's the human mind. That's the teacher. Is when I work with it, and I'll do work for hours with it, I am always coaching it so that it finds a fact and a truth. It cannot find it itself. If I let it on its own whim, it'll get 9 things wrong out of 10 because it doesn't know if it's wrong. And if you think it's right, you're in trouble. So very precise questions, but you have to know if it's wrong. You always have to know if it's wrong. It's very handy. I find it great if you can take like a document or a transcript and put it in. It summarize this for me. Give me 12 points. It's really good bullet points. And just is perfect for that.
Yes.
Don't ask anything serious of it. Not yet. And I think just naively at this point in history, you still have to supervise it. It has to know if it's right or not, and it's a human being.
I don't know. Maybe I should end here, James, because we could go on and on. What's next for you? What do you think will be your next great discovery or project that you're working on?
Really, the 2 things I have, bringing electricity and clean water to a world that's so desperate for it. And the answer is here right now. The gift that the world could give me is that one person that says yes to the world. We're looking for that voice that just said, yeah, we will do this now together. And the other is the great sites. Took me 40 years to get the Stingray. That's what that sail is called. 40 years to get it to this point in history. It's taken me 30 years. There's no AI when it comes to the great sites. It's all pre-AI. It took me 30 years to get to the point where now, just within the last 2 weeks, it's a gift to the world. And it's looking forward to people like you sharing it. It's free.
Yes.
Great sites is free, and it always will be. The insights, all the great human beings that have contributed to this are free. It will always be free as a gift to everybody. Now they get to go and have a glass of wine or a cup of coffee and just go, I had no idea the world was this incredible. And I get to think this way from now on. And
for that, you've been nominated. How do you pronounce it? The Capera Award? How do you?
From the United Nations, they nominated me for my work with energy and sustainability. It was very.
Do you know Michael Rada?
I do not.
I'm going to introduce you to Michael Rada. He's in the Czech Republic, and he's considered the father of sustainability, bringing it all to the forefront. And I did a podcast with him.
Oh,
I think you guys would be awesome together.
that'd be fantastic.
But
Appreciate
for all this new information to me, and this is not something that I even knew about until I heard about you, the great site. And for you to have the firsts on your site is even more amazing.
You know, you've written a book, is that right?
Yes, my business partner and I wrote a book, and it's a business book. It's golden nuggets for business owners, because when we had our business, we had all these aha moments that no one told us about.
Yeah.
Really, little things that could be big things that put you out of business. Like you should be paying your taxes or put aside.
That's a good idea. 5 really good years followed by 1 bad year is called 6 really bad years.
Yes, but it's just little things that we found out or people talked about in a nonchalant way, but that really impacts your business quite a bit. You know, we sharing information with our team. A lot of business owners tend to hold on to things, especially like revenue numbers. You know, you really don't know how much money you're making or how much money you're losing. They know they get a paycheck, and they don't understand the overall picture of the business. And we decided to share that with them, saying we're all in this together. If you guys don't go out and sell, there won't be any money coming in to pay you. So you will be let go, and the cycle will repeat itself, right?
Yeah. I just want to share one last thing before you go.
Okay.
This is my latest book. It's called The Art of Peace and Wisdom, and that'd be decades to bring together. I'll send you a copy.
Yes, please do.
In a world, if there's one defining characteristic between the great sites and I see it as a world, and we laughed about this the other day, is if you go on Netflix, it's Murder, Death, Kill, right? The Art of War is a best-selling book. You probably came across that.
Yes.
And the one day I was thinking, well, whoever has written The Art of Peace, what is its counterpart? What are the thoughts that go into everything that has built peace and built prosperity and built health and built incredible relationships, the beginnings and future days, and talks about things like truth and trust and sacred and love and wisdom? Where's that book? But you don't see that on the show.
Right.
So I spent a lot of years. So now you have a choice. One of the great sites is called Cain and Abel. It's one of my favorites. Because every day you pick what side of the piece of paper you want to live on. The end of the day, if you decided that you want to live on the positive side, and you write down all the great things that happened to you today on purpose, because no matter how bad your day is, there's always something great that's happening. If you live on that side of the page, you live an incredible life. It has. So this book is all about going back to the very fundamentals that make you unique. And it's a decision. How do you want to live? What's your unique voice? What do you bring to the world?
I definitely will share this as much as I can. The first person will be my husband, who believes in positive thoughts and, you know, living positively in this world, and that you can do anything if your mindset, it's a matter of mindset and embracing the positive. So I'm definitely going to show him your site. Thank you.
I can't thank you enough for having me. And here's an open invitation. You've written a book. You have to come on to the author's voice, that's central. You have to come and show your book and show the world who you are.
Absolutely, absolutely. And my second book, my second book is not really so much a nugget, is really how to helping business owners form a board of advisors.
Set up a date and a time. We'll invite the world, show them what you've done and what you're doing. You just pick a day and a time, and we'll bring the world together for you. Okay?
Thank you, James. I appreciate your coming on.
You take care, and thank you again so much.
This is Dr. Sandi. Thank you so much for sharing your journey on the first, where no two stories are alike, even if the circumstances are similar. Let this discussion serve as inspiration for others to show what's possible, and more importantly, to produce seconds and thirds.